Hello everyone, Neil Tappin here from Golf Monthly, and welcome to this video in which we're going to take a look at the 7 things we think could change within the rules of golf. So what you're going to watch is a conversation between myself and Golf Monthly's rules guru, that's Jezz Elwood, where we'll look at a few things that we think could be tweaked within the rules, either to make them a little bit fairer, possibly, make the game a bit faster, or just make them easier to understand. So yeah, let's get started looking at the 7 things that we think could change within the rules of golf. Okay, Jezz, so in this video, we are going to take a look at 7 rules that we'd possibly like to see changed, or possible rules changes that could come into play. Your first one is what, Jezz?
Well, my first one is fairly straightforward. It's the provisional ball rule. And I just think it would be a lot clearer and more easily understood if it stopped at a certain point through Rule 18.3b, where it says you must use the word provisional. Now, if it stopped there, there's then no doubt. But unfortunately, it then goes on to say, or otherwise clearly indicate that you're playing a ball provisionally under Rule 18.3. And I just think that that turns it into a grey area from a pretty black and white one to me.
Right, okay, yeah, because if I stand there and I cut one off into the trees and I say, oh, that's dicey, I'm going to hit another one, does that count as a provisional or not?
Well, I think if you go into the interpretations, anything that suggests doubt as to whether you find it is probably enough. The example they give is, I'm going to play another just in case.
Right.
I guess yours is a paraphrase of that, so it might be all right. Whereas phrases like I'm going to reload or I'm going to play another are not good enough.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be simpler if the rule said you must say I'm going to play a provisional ball? End of. Black and white, no two ways about it.
Yes, and I think if we were offering advice to people on how to proceed, our advice to people would probably be just be, clearer than clear and just to say that you're playing a provisional.
It's the easiest way, isn't it, at the end of the day? And, obviously, if you say I'm going to play another just in case, that's deemed okay. But I think you'll probably end up playing with some people who perhaps say that isn't good enough, even though it is sanctioned within the interpretations. So far easier just to say, I'm going to hit a provisional. Job done.
Okay, so my first one, I'm going to play devil's advocate on this one because I'm not too sure I really believe what I'm about to say, but we get a lot of comments from people saying this should be a new rule. And that is that people think it's unfair when their ball comes to roll into a divot and finish in a divot. And they want to get some form of free relief because it does feel a bit unfair, because if some person in the group ahead of you hit it into exactly the same spot, they've taken a massive divot, then you get there 7 minutes later and you're in exactly that same divot. Well, they had an even ground to play from. You've not got an even ground to play from, and it feels a little bit unfair. That's the kind of case for the change of the rule. Jezz, what's the case against that?
Well, I always think there are 4 parts to the case against. And the first one, which some people I don't think quite understand, is how would you actually define a divot? Because unless you can have a watertight definition of what is and isn't a divot within the rules, then everyone's going to be playing by slightly different yardsticks.
Agreed. So, we've all had scrappy lies, haven't we?
We've all had scrappy lies. Is a slight sclaf a divot? Half the field are probably saying yes, and half the field with more stringent playing companions are probably not been granted relief. So the whole thing would become unfair in another way, I think.
Yes.
Well, the second thing is, I think we're talking about unfairness. Unfair things happen on the golf course, don't they? And I think the prime example I thought of was, you play a perfect wedge shot. It's going to spin and stop dead right next to the flag, but instead it hits the flag and bounces back into a penalty area, as of course happened to Tiger in the Masters back in, can't remember, was it 2013, I think?
Yeah, I think so.
It's gone from being a perfect shot to one where it's going to cost him probably 2, maybe 3 shots, just because it was almost too perfect, the shot. Now that's more unfair than having a ball in a divot half an inch below the ground, I would have said. But there's no one clamouring for that to be a change rule. If your ball hits the flagstick on the approach, you get to play it again. No one seems to be clamouring for that.
Well, where does it end? I mean, if you get a bad bounce, straight, you hit a sprinkler head and it bounces over the back of the green and goes into a bush, or
that is the thing, isn't it?
Or something.
Okay, so what happens if your ball strikes an out of bounds post that's that wide up by the green and ricochets back to 3 feet and you knock it in, whereas an inch either way and you're going back and reloading and playing again, and effectively probably costing yourself 2 shots. Is that if it was a line on the ground, you get 2 very different results. So the clamour for fairness is not always a wise one, I don't think.
Okay, your third rule that you think could change would be what?
Well, it's my second one, our third one overall, isn't it? It's relief from a wrong green must be taken, rule 13.1F. Now, I think that could be changed just slightly so that you don't have to take it if you're going to use a putter on your next shot. Because I guess the whole idea of taking relief is that the green doesn't get damaged, and you're not going to damage it with a putter, are you? So if you're on a links course and there's a green there and a green there and a strip of very tightly cut fringe between, wouldn't it keep play moving a little bit better? You don't have to go through the dropping procedure. You don't risk taking a big chunk out of the fringe with a wedge when you try and chip it back across. It just seems to be a very simple change to the rules to say, except when you're using a putter. And that could be allowed.
Especially if after dropping it off the green, you then end up using a putter anyway, because you're just on the fringe effectively of another green.
On a links course, unless you've got a target to go through, you probably are anyway. But maybe I don't know if there are other precedents for that, where an example is of the rules allows you to use a certain club but not another one. But I don't think that would be too complicated just to tweak that rule slightly.
Right. So moving on.
Yeah.
My second one is that I would like to just debate the idea of changing the knee-high drop and just saying drop the ball. Because this was one of the rules that was changed when the latest set of revisions came in at the beginning of 2019. And I remember there was a lot of chat about it at the time. And when we first started doing it, I don't know if anybody who's watching this felt the same, but I felt a bit awkward doing it because I always felt like I was going to drop the ball and the ball was going to bounce and hit me. But I think that was because, I don't know, I think I was just getting used to it. But I just feel like the rules of golf are one of those things that I think some people find very intimidating about the game. And sort of like, there's so many things you can get wrong, that if you could just broaden the definition and just say drop the ball, I don't really see what detriment that would have to the game. I don't see people getting a massive advantage by dropping it. The ball's more likely to come to rest where it's dropped, and ultimately that's going to lead to fewer redrops possibly. And just a simpler definition means that fewer people will get caught out. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, I guess you run into the problem of exactly how, you could in theory drop it from 0.5 millimetre. If you genuinely want it in the ground, is that you're virtually placing it, but where would you draw the line? I think they did at some stage when they were discussing the revisions have it in mind that they might potentially just say drop it.
You could say drop it above 2 inches or an inch.
But then you're still back in that same position of. I think that maybe a lot of people misinterpreted awkwardness for just different.
Yes, I think I was in that category.
Because that's not exactly a natural. And then before that, a lot of people won't remember. I don't remember playing this, but dropping it over your shoulder.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I think to myself, when I drop the ball from knee height, it's quite easy to be a little bit too low or a little bit too high because it has to be from knee height, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I don't think anyone's out with certainly not people I play with a set square or something just to try and make sure the angle is absolutely perfect. So
yeah,
I think most people, knee height, it's quite difficult to judge what is exactly knee height when you're standing above it, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah.
Only someone from the side can really see. So I know a lot of the tour pros took the mickey out of the new rule a bit when it first came out, but I think that's mostly settled down now, and it seems to have just found its niche.
Yes, and I can see that. Okay, Jezz. So our fifth one, your third, is what?
Well, this is one where if you tee off from outside the teeing area or from the wrong teeing area and you don't correct the mistake by the time you tee off on the next hole, the penalty is disqualification, which I think is a bit harsh for the common offence of teeing up maybe a couple of inches in front of the markers, which is the most typical teeing up from outside the teeing area. And there's a 2-stroke penalty for that. And I would have thought that was more than adequate. And then when you go into the rules elsewhere, Rule 14.7b, when you play from a wrong place, you're only penalised beyond the 2 shots if it's deemed a serious breach. And a serious breach is one that has to give you a significant advantage over playing a stroke from the correct place. So right. I think there's a bit of inconsistency between that and then finding a couple of holes later when someone, I think we probably know that it's unlikely to come to light anyway, but it might in a professional event come to light, and then you're disqualified for basically pinching an inch, which I'm not sure is worth any more than a 2-shot penalty, really. That's just my view.
I'm trying to think. I mean, perhaps there's a significant advantage to be gained somehow, somewhere along the line here, but I'm trying to figure out what that might be, because I agree with you. If you just accidentally just teed it up an inch or two ahead of the markers, which, as you say, is probably the most likely thing.
Yeah.
How much of an advantage is that? The only thing I would say, Jezz, is that at amateur level, if you have a bit of a moment where you're not thinking properly and you go and tee off the yellows on one hole instead of the whites, but even,
yes, I agree that could give you a significant advantage, but even then, is it going to give you more than 2 shots advantage?
It's not enough to make you want to do it, to break the rules, to kind of get an advantage.
No, exactly. At most, the difference in the pars, it might occasionally be 1 shot. It might become a par 4 instead of a par 5. But that's still only 1 shot, isn't it? Even if it's, then there's a difference in the difficulty of the hole. Is it ever more than a 2-shot thing? I don't know.
So, okay, my next one, Jezz, is the process. Well, what happens when you hit your ball into a bunker that is filled with water? So, playing golf on a really bad day, loads of rain, and the bunker is completely filled, and your only option, depending on exactly the state of how much water is in the bunker, there is a chance that your only option might be to drop the ball outside the bunker, at which point you get a penalty.
Yes.
And that just feels quite harsh to me. It feels like you've got no option in that scenario other than taking the penalty shot.
You haven't, but I suppose the counter argument is that bunkers are supposed to be, well, they're not called hazards anymore, but they're supposed to be problematic. And if you're in that bunker, chances are, from a fairway bunker, depending on the height of the lip, etc., you might not have been able to progress it very far. So if you get away scot-free, then you're perhaps gaining an advantage that you're not really entitled to.
I can tell you, Jezz, that if I was forced to play a greenside chip shot from directly behind a bunker off a tight lie, that would be far more problematic to my game than playing the bunker shot in the first place.
Yeah, well, possibly, but I think for most people, let's say it's a fairway bunker and you're either in it with quite a steep lip or you drop outside and have a clear shot in the semi-rough or whatever. It's obviously a lot easier, isn't it? I think that the rules makers are just keen to not let you get away scot-free with something that, based on where you'd hit that shot, should have been an issue of some sort.
Yes, and it's important to say you can get a free drop in this scenario if there is somewhere in the bunker to drop it.
You can. You are able to take point of maximum available relief, which means you could still have your feet in the water, or you could drop it in a shallower bit of water than where the ball is actually lying. That is one difference there. When you're taking relief in a bunker, you can find the spot of maximum available relief.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't have that option in other areas of the golf course if you were dropping away from a cart path or something like that.
No. So that is, but a completely flooded bunker. Yes, people, and understandably, feel a bit aggrieved, but looking at it slightly the other way, why should you get away scot-free with hitting it into let's call it a hazard for the sake of its potential to scupper your progress?
Okay, Jez, so on to the final one, and this one is about loose impediments, but particularly large loose impediments. Explain what it is.
Well, we're thinking of boulder-sized loose impediments, and Tiger and the moving of the boulder in Phoenix in 1999, and it just seems to me to be a little bit unfair that someone with a big following can move a considerably larger loose impediment than someone with one man and his dog following him around.
Right, so if you've got a big crowd following you, hundreds of people, thousands of people, I don't know how many people follow Tiger usually, but usually it's quite a lot. Potentially you can enlist that crowd to help you move a really big loose impediment like a boulder, or it could be tree trunk or something that was in your way.
Yeah.
Don't know.
You can. It just seems to me slightly, I wouldn't say unsavoury, but it just doesn't quite sit right with me, should we say. And I know we've talked about fairness before, and golf will never be completely fair, but I think you could, in that scenario, maybe limit it to just the player's side that are able to move items like that. So that would either be 2 people, you and your caddy, or 4 if you were playing in a pairs thing. So a maximum of 4 people are able to move a loose impediment. Or maybe they should reterm it, loose has to mean loose, because that boulder was anything but loose, really, wasn't it? But anyway.
Well, ultimately, if you can enlist enough people to move it, then it's movable. It's loose. So
loose within the rules, but anything but loose in practical reality. Yeah.
Okay, so there you have it. That's our 7 rules that potentially could be changed. That we think maybe we could, started a good discussion. What do you think? Do you think there's anything we've missed? We'd be really interested to hear your thoughts. Jezz, if you could change just one of those that we've discussed, what would you do?
Ooh, if I could change this one, I think it would be the provisional ball rule. It just seems to be crying out to be black and white and doesn't need to go into that extra detail that just introduces that area of greyness.
I think that, I would agree. I think that would make sense, but we'll see, because I think when it comes to the rules of golf, they have to cover so many different scenarios, and there's possibly a load of scenarios that we haven't even considered in this video that mean the rules are the way they are. And I think the ruling bodies, the R&A and the USGA, do a really good job of trying to make the rules as understandable for people as possible. In fact, Jezz, you and I did a video not long ago talking about why the rules of golf have to be the way they are, which hopefully explain that. I can put in a link below to that video if you're interested. But that's it for now. Jezz, thanks for joining me.
No problem. Always good to have rules. Yeah.
And thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.